again, Rob said my name is Anthony Russomanno. My email and my phone number are right on this slide right here, so jot it down. If you do have some follow-up questions specific to your score, feel free to follow up with me. But I've been teaching and tutoring at Princeton Review for over 17 years, helping students and get into the colleges of their choice, and I work full-time at Princeton U. So I've been doing this a long time, and I'm here to share some insight tonight with you. So here's a quick agenda, but I want you to understand what this is not. It's not a substitute for your preparation, thinking that tomorrow you're going to go in and take the SAT and get 250 points higher. It's a precursor. I want you to get some insight and direction, but it's not intended for you to walk away and know everything about the SAT. So I want to shed some light on it, alleviate some frustrations or any fears you might have. I want you to better relate to the exam, and if you're a parent out there, I want you to understand your children as SAT testers and what they're going through. So that's kind of what I want to do tonight. And one other thing is I don't want you to take your test scores personally. So I'm going to repeat that. Don't take your test scores personally. It doesn't say who you are as a person or anything of that. So that's kind of my agenda for tonight. I get this a lot in my line of work, and I get parents call me or students call me. I have a 4.57298 GPA. I'm doing well in school, but, and what comes after the but is I'm not a great test taker. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. So with that said, does anybody know what the SAT stands for? And if you do, please chat it in the in your message board right here. Does anybody know what it stands for? It's not standardized admissions test. If you guys aren't ready to participate, that's okay. I've got some answers on the board. Student ability test, it's not any of that. Silly, annoying test. Some of you might think that that's the test, but really it's nothing. It just stands for the SAT. They changed that many, many, many years ago. So it doesn't even stand for anything. So I'm going to give you a quick breakdown. It's 7 times a year. There's 10 sections, 3 math, 3 reading, writing, and an experimental. It's out of 2,400. But you guys can do that research. There's the reading and the math. I really want to get into the real essence of what tonight is all about. And here's some information on the writing sections. But I want to talk about the misconceptions on the SAT, and that's really a big thing. So some people think it measures your intelligence. I know I did when I took the SAT many, many years ago. Or students who do well in school are going to ace it. But these misconceptions, they're myths or misconceptions, as you might take them. So let's really look at these and talk further about them, because what does the SAT really measure? And the only thing it really measures is how well you take the SAT, nothing more. And that's why I want you to understand, don't take your test scores personally. Because of that, it measures how well you take the SAT. And if you're not familiar with it, or the SAT, you might struggle on it, as you might know a lot of friends who've done that. So here's some testing truths. Again, I mentioned not taking your scores personally. They don't measure your intelligence. Proper coaching can increase your score. I know that for a fact because I tutor the stuff. My students improve 400 points, 450, 350. The range is quite astonishing. That GPA is the most important in admissions. It's more important than your test score. But test scores are still relied heavily upon. Okay, so those are the testing truths. So you can't forget those. Here's a little teaser slide, but this is what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. How do you succeed on the SAT, which is a multiple choice test? There's 5 things I think you're going to need to succeed on it. A lot of people think it's an academic test, and it's really not. And that's why you see a lot of students who do well in school struggle on the SAT, because it's not an academic test. So we'll come back to this and the answers to that. So here we go. We're going to be talking about strategies tonight. Here's your first tip that I'm going to give you, and it's know thy enemy. And when I say know thy enemy, it's does anyone know who writes this test? If you can chat it in there. Anybody know who writes this exam?
And Anthony, I'm the only one getting those responses. So
again,
we have a bunch of people saying College Board, but
okay,
you actually
perfect.
Yeah, so it looks like they're
perfect. So I don't see it.
Yeah, they just go to me, so I have to relay them
College
to
Board.
you. ETS.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thanks, Rob.
Teachers.
ETS, exactly. ETS is the writer. The College Board's commissions ETS, and I say the evil testing. I mean the educational testing service. That's my little joke about them. But knowing who writes the exam is going to help us take the exam. You can actually go in ahead of time and understand what content's on the test, how it's scored, what the point system is, how predictable it is. So one of the things we're going to talk about, and the first tip is knowing ETS, and that's the enemy for us because they're the ones who write the exam and we're trying to beat the exam. So does anyone know why we take the test? And because of time, I'll take you through it. Well, some of the reasons are it's part of the admissions package. It's a way for colleges to compare us on the same scale. But ultimately, ETS and the College Board, it's for money reasons, unfortunately. They make a lot of money on it, and that's just how it is. And with that is if they don't want everybody to do well on the exam. If everybody did well, they'd only take it one time, and it wouldn't necessarily be credible. If everyone did poorly, people would say, I'm not going to college. So most people fit in this middle of this distribution here. So people will take it again, and they'll retest, and they'll pay more money to take the test. So it's purposely set up where there's only a few at the top end, a few at the low end, and everyone else is kind of bubbling in at the medium. And that's really important because that's going to help us take this test if we understand what they're trying to attempt. When I was in high school, I thought they wanted to see how smart I was, and that's not really the case. Okay, so that's really important that we understand that whole part of it. Okay, so why do students struggle with the test? And again, I'm trying to give you insight about the whole testing process so when we move forward to actually prepping, we understand what we're up against. So when you think about doing in high school, I mean, when you take tests, your teachers want you to finish your exam. Your teachers want to assess your strengths and weaknesses. On the SAT, you're not really meant to finish. They're trying to trick you. To write an essay, you get hours, weeks upon that, and on the SAT, you get 25 minutes. The test is on the SAT, you're under serious time constraints. In high school, you can read at home. So there's a lot of things of why students struggle with the test because it's very different from high school. Okay? Take a look at this. See if you can read that. And what you'll notice is, I mean, there's some things that the test writers know about you that you don't even realize that they know about you. They know how your eyes glance over things. They know how your brain processes things. And in addition to that, you have an experimental section where you act as a guinea pig on the whole thing. So with that said, they kind of know what you're going to do before maybe you know what you're going to do. And that's kind of the point of this little exercise. So again, why do students struggle with the test? Well, the test writers know what you're going to choose, and they lure you in. They make it very tricky, and they know you're predictable. Okay, so, and again, they use that experimental section to show. So if everyone got a question wrong, it's going to be a hard question. So those are some reasons why students struggle with the test. So how do we counter that? Well, before we talk about how we counter that, I'm going to do a little exercise with you. It's called word association. Rob, I'm going to ask them to chat some things in there, some answers in there. And when you get a whole bunch of them, you can kind of fill me in on what they're saying. So I want you to think of a word after I say it or after you see it here. And I want you to type it in the chat, okay? So here we go. Peanut butter. Rob, what kind of answers are we getting?
Jelly, 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 peanut, jam, jelly time,
perfect.
sticky food.
All right, perfect. Here, all right, here's another word. Here we go. Another word, everybody. Table. Let's get some chatting in there. What do you got?
Kitchen for eating, la mesa, chair,
Chair, okay. All right, and then here's the next one. I want you guys to think of a number, any number. Type it in the chat.
1, 3, 4, 26, 5, 4, 22, 23, 5, 9, 3, 23.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Rob. All right, thanks everybody for doing my experiment. Now, again, I prepared this PowerPoint well before we had this session. So, are you an average Joe? How many of you said jelly or bread? How many of you said chair? Now, I don't know you, and I don't know how many of you wrote that, but I heard Rob say jelly quite often on that one. I heard him say chair. And then as far as numbers go, most of you picked 2 and 4. How many of you picked like negative 1.74? How many picked you a fraction? You could have picked any number you wanted. I knew you weren't going to say that. Again, this is what I'm talking about. This is how the test writers, they know what you're going to say before you're going to say, because you're very predictable. That doesn't make it bad. You just need to understand that. And this goes a lot into this testing process, okay? They know which wrong answers you're going to like, and they put them on the test to kind of lure you in. So again, everyone I think picks a positive whole number, Rob, unless I'm wrong. I didn't hear any negatives. I heard 2, 5, 7, 4. So again, a lot of us, I call this guy Average Joe, and there's nothing wrong with having a lot of Average Joe in us, because it can actually help us on the test. You just need to understand that about you. Okay, I never did when I took the test. Now that I teach it, I teach this a lot as a big strategy. Okay, so remember this. Okay, so let's move on to another tip. We're going to get back to Average Joe in a second. Again, I'm painting this picture for you about testing, and this is going to go all into our strategy and our bigger game plan. Another tip or strategy is you need to take the test on your own terms. You need to understand your personality. Some of us have a lot more Average Joe in us than others. You need to manage your tests. You need to pace yourself. You know how you study the best. Okay, and this is going to be in a prime example. I had a tutoring student that I was working with once. Here's an example. Here's actually the math section on the test. It shows you how many questions here. This is actually from our manual. It shows you that the test is in order of difficulty. For those who don't know, it goes from easy to medium to hard on the math section, and it does by in certain sections. So that middle section over here, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're all easy. Medium's 11, 12, and the hard are 17, 18, 19, 20. That's really important, because if you know if it's an easy, medium, or hard question, it's going to help you solve it. Okay. So for example, when I was tutoring this one kid, he was scoring 430 in math. That the problem is he didn't take his test on his own terms. He answered every single question, and what I noticed on when I looked at his test was he get every single hard question wrong, and on the easy ones he get number 2 wrong and number 4 wrong. He get a bunch of easy wrongs. He scored about 50% on the easy. I'm sharing this story because it has a lot of relevance. So when I took over as being his tutor, I said, the first thing I said is, we're going to take the test on your own terms. You're not allowed to do any of the hard questions because, one, you can't get them. He wasn't that great of a math student, but I wanted to maximize his score. So I said, you're not allowed to do question 14 through 18 on the first section. You can't do question 15 through 20 on the second section. And you can't do 13 through 16 on the next one. You're going to do 15 fewer questions. So you're only going to attempt and answer 39 of the 54 math questions. But you got to improve your accuracy. That you can't have number 2 getting number 2 wrong because it's easy. So he actually went from about 50% accuracy on the easy to 100%. His score went from 430 in math to 610. Not because he got smarter at math, it was because he took the test on his own terms. He didn't waste any time on the hard questions, so he got all that time back, which they took longer, and he took it on his own terms. It's a true story. It's a great story in showing you how just pacing alone and how which questions you choose to answer, you can avoid all the hard questions and still get a great score. Now, if you're trying to score over 700, you're going to have to answer all the questions, but he was never going to get over 700 in math, so we took the test on his own terms. So that's a prime example of that. Another strategy, which probably a lot of you do now, what is process of elimination, or POE, where you narrow down your choices. So what is the capital of Malawi? Okay, well, we know it's not A, it's not B, C, or D, and there's our answer, E. Now, the SAT is harder than that, but the point of this is to tell you guys that if you eliminate and get closer to the answer, you have a better shot at it, okay? And we'll touch on this a little bit later when we see some. Okay, so guessing is another tip or strategy, okay? Now, should you guess? Now, it's not a skill we learn in school, but should you guess? And it's really going to depend, and we need to understand the little test a little bit more, okay? So I hear an audience question, yeah, should we outsmart the people that make the test? Well, yeah, we're trying to not fall into their traps, and I'm kind of showing you where some of the traps are. Now, some of it might be more straightforward. And again, in an hour, I can't show you everything, but I'm going to get you thinking about it. And if you're thinking about it, you might prepare properly, and then you won't fall into these traps. So let's talk about guessing. Okay, now take a look at this. Process elimination and guessing. What would you do in these instances? Okay, I'm going to ask everybody in the audience again. How many of you would guess on number 1? Now, you don't know the question. I didn't give you the question, but there are your answers. I eliminated A only. How many would guess on number 2? So please chat to me in there. Which numbers would you guess on? 1, 2, 3, and 4, just number 1, just number 2. Some of you go, none, you wouldn't guess on anything, and how many would you guess? And again, you don't know the question. And Rob, let me know kind of what people are saying in there.
Mostly 3 and 4. Some people saying just 4.
Okay.
1,
Okay.
2, 3, and 4. 2 to 4.
Okay. If you're going to guess on 3, you're going to guess on 4. It's the same amount of eliminations there. Okay. So some of you, again, it depends. So now, let me kind of, if anybody's taking the ACT, let me help you out right now. You don't actually lose any points for getting one wrong. So if anyone was ever going to take the ACT, you would actually guess on all of them. So again, depending on the test you're taking, you need to understand how it works. And so one of the game plan, this goes beyond SAT, is how does the system work? How are you scored? On a math in high school, if you actually show your work, sometimes you get more points. So the people that don't show your work, you're actually losing the opportunity to gain points. So on the SAT, what happens when you answer and you get it right? If anybody knows, chat it in.
Get a point. Full credit.
You get a point. What happens if you leave it blank? Anybody know?
0. Lose a quarter point.
Yeah. Well, if you leave it blank, nothing happens. 0, right? And if you get it wrong, you lose a quarter of a point. That's actually the scoring system on an SAT. So let's take that and actually apply it. So let's take a look at this. Now, knowing that and knowing the scoring system, I'm going to ask you guys again. Who would guess on which ones would you guess on 1, 2, 3, and 4? And see what you say now, knowing the scoring system.
2 to 4.
And what kind of answers, Rob? Does anybody change 2 to 4? Okay.
All of
Good.
them.
Okay, let's put it into practice. All of them? Okay, great. So here we go. So if you're down to 2, what do? You need to guess. If you're ever down to 50-50, chances on 2 questions you get 1 right and 1 wrong. You actually get 1 raw point. You lose a half a point. Oh, actually a quarter of a point. That should be, I wrote that wrong. You're actually earning 3/4 of a point when you do a 50-50. You're going to get 1 right typically. So you're earning points. If you're down to 3, what do? My suggestion, my students actually, we guess when we even eliminate 1 because there are some bad answers out there. Probability says if you get 1 in 4 chance, if you're doing 4 questions, you're going to get 1 right. And it's actually, you can still be a wash almost. So again, there's longer than an hour. We spend more time. I spend 6 weeks with students on how to guess and stuff like that. But the point is, if you can eliminate, you got to learn to start to guess. Most students leave it blank because they go, oh, I don't want to get it wrong, but you only lose a quarter of a point. So guessing becomes a very powerful strategy. So get in the habit of crossing answers off, understand the order of difficulty, be aggressive, okay? And if, let's say you're down, if you eliminated 2 choices, don't flip a coin. That takes too long because you need time. Go in with the letter of the day. I go in with the letter A because my name is Anthony. And if it's A's crossed out, I go to B because it's closest to A. Going in with the letter of the day saves you time because we need all the time we can get. And so these guessing strategies and elimination really go a long way. Some student who doesn't guess on maybe 10 questions they left blank, and someone who guesses, it's the person who's getting, an extra couple raw points or turning it into 20, 30, 40 points on an SAT. So it's real important to do that. If you, the question is, if you're aiming for a high score, should you guess or leave it blank? Again, if you eliminate an answer choice or 2, you should be guessing. No matter what, whether you're aiming for a high or even a low score, you should be guessing. Now, again, there's more to it, and that's part of understanding the test more. If you read a question and if you have no clue, for example, Johnny's driving down the freeway at 40 miles an hour. He stopped at the store for some groceries and bought some cantaloupe at 10 cents a pound. On his way home, he knocked over 3 pedestrians and broke the speed limit. How far did Frank carry the piano? Skip it. You don't know what to do. You skip that question. But if you can eliminate some, then you start guessing. Okay? So let's take a look at an actual problem. For those who've seen this problem before, I use this problem quite a bit because it's a great indicator. Please don't throw the answer out there for people. Um, so here's the question. So take a look at it. Everybody grab your pencil out and start looking at it. We're actually going to put into practice things that I've been talking about. Okay? So take a look at it. Now, I'll start breaking it down for you. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is sometimes the speak on the way the ETS writes the verbiage on a question is difficult. So one of the things you should do is always rephrase it in your own words. So I'm going to rephrase it for you. Take two straight lines and divide this donut into the maximum number of shaded regions. That's what it's asking you to do. Okay. Okay. And so what now start for those of you who have never seen this before, what answer did you get? What did you pick? So start chatting it in there. And Rob, when you get some answers, shout them out to me.
Got a couple A's, mostly C's, mostly C's.
Mostly C's, okay? An A and some C's and stuff, okay?
Couple.
All right. Now, so now let's actually solve it. By the way, when this was on the actual SAT many, many years ago, about 99% of the country got it wrong, okay? So first thing we should note, so let's start breaking this thing down. How many of you cut it like that? Most people cut the donut like that, and they get 4 pieces, okay? But we need to understand, another strategy is it easy, medium, or difficult, this question? It's number 18, okay? This is a difficult question. Being that it's difficult, my average Joes who pick 4, you're your average Joe. You need to use process elimination and cross off wrong answers. So our average Joe picking 4, it was too fast. It's a hard problem. You have to understand it. So this is the prime example of this average Joe. If you're average Joe and you know it, if you picked 4, you should have crossed 4 off already is not the answer because it was too easy. So let's look at another strategy. And he is the people who pick 6, there's the word greatest in there right now, which is a leading word. Again, the people who write the test, they do things to throw you off. And when you see something, what is the greatest number? A lot of people pick 6. And so I cross that out. So by default, I pick 5 because everything else is wrong. Here's the thing: if I already got 4 from that, I know that 3 and 2 are wrong as well. So just by elimination, 5 is my default answer. Okay? And people are going, what are you talking about, Anthony? And if you didn't know between 5 and 6, you still should have guessed. But here's the thing is we don't really need to know. Strategy 6, it doesn't matter how you got the answer. You don't have that time. You got to move on to the next one. But because you guys are probably curious to know, if you were thinking that way, most people don't think this way, that's how you cut the donut. So the 1% who got it right probably either guessed or they actually think this way and they cut the donut this way. Okay. So again, is this really a math problem? No, it's not. But it shows you the couple strategies. One is Joe Bloggs is like if you think like Joe, you're going to get it wrong. So use that to your advantage. Okay. So so that's one sample problem. So in terms of SAT math, it's not difficult. Everything you need to know is probably through your sophomore year. The questions are in order of difficulty, very important. So if it's a hard question, it's probably going to have a hard answer, okay? It's not that easy. So understand that. It's going to help you eliminate answer choices if you know if it's easy, medium, or hard, okay? So you guys who picked 4, that's the jelly answer. You picked jelly it's like the peanut butter jelly thing, okay? So let's look at some other things. So what's really being tested? So let's take this one, the number 0. Simple concept. Okay, we learned this probably in what, 3rd grade, 4th grade, the number 0. All right, chat that in. What's your answer here? The number 0 is what? Rob, what do we any answers here
We're getting a lot of
besides D and E?
E's And
A lot of E's.
we got an A. We got a couple A's coming in.
All right,
E and A
good.
are the most
And how about
popular.
this one? Here's the number. The number 0 is positive, negative, neither, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of E's. Here's the thing. For those of you who are saying E, the fact that you're here is telling me that you actually do care, which is nice. But you could still say E. I won't be offended. So what they do, the number 0, if you don't know 0 is even, which we had so long again, the other thing about this test is the content. You got to know the content on the test. And if you got to clear the cobwebs in your head, and if you forgot that 0 is even, you're going to get one wrong on the test. Okay? And what they do, though, is they take that and they put it actually into a problem. They don't ask you the number 0, what is it? But they go, how many distinct even integers are in the number, and they give you a number. So let's take a look at another sample problem where they actually see if you understand words and what they mean and things like that. So take a look at this and see if you can kind of come up with the answer really quickly, just because we're running out of time fast.
I'm seeing everything
All
here.
right, chat.
A lot of B's and a lot of D's coming in. A couple
All
E's.
right, a lot of B's. All right. So again, here we are. We've got a bunch of people, and yet we haven't been unanimous in anything except, I mean, mostly people picking jelly when I said peanut butter. But for those of you who got it right, great. For those of you who didn't, probably what happened was, are you an average Joe? Did you include 70, 71, 72, 73? Most of us don't. And we forget it. It's something as simple as that. And you go, well, shoot, I forgot that. Well, they know you're going to forget that. And this is why the test is tricky. They test you on content you forgot. They test you on things they know you're going to make an error on. So you have to be very careful. You got to read the questions carefully, and you've got to be aware of what they're going to test you on and what they might trick you on. All right, so here's another math problem, and I promise we'll get to some reading and stuff like that. So let's look at this one. It's a number 17, folks, so I'm going to give you a heads up right now. That's a hard one. So if you get some answers, you guys smart enough and fast enough, throw out some answers for Rob so he can kind of let me know what you guys are doing. Now, if you're starting to figure it out, if you're having trouble and you don't know what to do, use Joe to help you eliminate. So I'm going to give you the heads up on that. So what would Joe do? And if on a hard one, Joe gets them wrong. So whatever Joe would do, don't pick that answer. So what I'm trying to help you on is like, how do we eliminate? Any answers, Rob? What do we get?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of B's, some C's, and some D's coming in
All
as
right.
well.
All right. So those are picking B. There's your average Joe answer. Again, those people picking B are picking A. Joe likes to multiply things. So he goes 2/5 times 2/5, that's 425. Or he takes the number 1, which is the whole apple pie, and he's subtracting the 2/5 and the 2/5 and getting 1/5. It's a hard problem, guys. So those of you falling for that, what you got to do is say, whatever I'm picking now, whatever I pick on a hard question is wrong. I will cross it out. And it's almost counterintuitive. Okay, what I pick, wrong, cross it out. And that's what some of these tricky questions are. So another one you pick out. These are partial answers. So when we actually look at how to solve it is, he eats 2/5 and then there's 3/5 less on Thursday. 2/5 of 3/5 is 6/25, and that's what was eaten. So now you got to add Tuesday and Thursday together, find out what was eaten, and then you got to find out what's uneaten, and then you got to subtract. So those who picked D correctly got it, but there's some steps involved in it. And again, is the math hard? No, the math's not hard because people can probably do subtraction, addition of fractions. What makes it hard is how they word it, how they ask it, and all these things that lure you in. And there's all these steps involved. So that's what's hard. It's not, oh, I can't add 2/5 and 6/25. Okay. Now, again, I'm going through this fast. Understand, test prep isn't meant to be this fast, but the point is I want you to start thinking about how you're going about it. I want to eliminate some of your frustrations with like, oh, I didn't do so well on it. Well, maybe this is why, because you're falling for these average answers, or you're not really thinking about it. You're not doing enough steps in the problem. Now, you definitely got to learn some content, how to solve, but you also have to learn about what to be aware of. And then what we do at Princeton Review, we actually teach you some methods on how to solve certain problems. Okay, so what's really being tested? Fundamentals, basic arithmetic, geometry. The other thing, the other tip you need is these methods that I'm talking about. Step-by-step methods for specific problems. You need a game plan in every section of the test. So let's talk about some technique. Let's talk about another set of problems in the writing section where we talk about grammar. So here's some error identifications, and it's really testing your grammar. So take a look at these two really fast. So basically what you're supposed to do, and here's another tip. Don't read the directions on the SAT. You should know all the directions before you go in. That's a time-saving thing. So let's look at these. Take a look at them. See if you can solve them. All you have to do is try to find the error, if there is one, in the problem. So I'll give you a few minutes for these. So here's a few, and then here's a few. So I give you 5 grammar problems. And there's a host of grammar questions on it. And when did we have grammar? We probably had it a long time ago. My grammar is definitely not that great. I grew up in New Jersey. And a lot of forget about it and how you doings, and it doesn't go well with the grammar. So I struggled on the SAT. Actually, back in my day, it was the SAT subject exam where the grammar was. So anybody have some answers here? Chat them in. Chat like 13 is whatever, 14 is whatever. I'm going to go right to the answers and talk to you about them. So number 13, again, because of time, I'm going to go through these really fast. 13 here, A is the error. And people go, well, why is A the error? And the grammar rule is called redundancy. When you say in the year and then you give a year, 1492, that's redundant. You just need to say in 1492. You don't need the word the year because that is a year. That's called redundancy. So one of the things we do at Princeton is we go over the content. We teach you the grammar rules frequently tested, and we actually teach you through how to go about solving it and going through your actually repertoire of grammar errors. Number 14, in the malaria question, the answer is C. Now, hopefully this isn't making you angry at the test writers, but you don't know whether a person is doing the traveling or whether malaria is doing the traveling. So it cannot be, the error is C. Anyway, the other page. On this one, actually, the vast majority, actually, my apologies, 16. Somehow on my slide, it is wrong. It should be the vast majority. Actually, the answer is incorrect. The answer is correct. It is C. It should be prefers, because the vast majority should be a singular term. It's almost like saying the United States. That's singular. So it should be prefers. It should have an S on there. In number 17, there is no error. People are going, well, shoot. And number 18, it's fewer mashed potatoes, because you can't count mashed potatoes, so it has to be, it should be less, not fewer. When you can count something, you use fewer. Use less when you can't count something. So this is a quick grammar study on that, okay? And here's a writing question. So on the grammar, when you guys are looking at grammar questions and how to approach them, the first thing, the number one thing you need to do is understand the grammar rules. I went through it really fast, but these grammar rules, they test probably about 12 to 15 only, so the content isn't very wide range. You need to understand what they're testing and then an approach on how you go about doing it. Our students go through kind of a little step-by-step approach, but that's how we do it. If you're weak at grammar, you need some methods then. Here's another one. This one's where you actually improve the whole sentence, where they underline a long period of a long sentence. In this case, they're underlining everything, and you need to find out what's wrong with it. So again, you got to go through your grammar rules. Is it this? Is it that? What are they tricking you on? And in this case here, it's not A, and A actually repeats the first sentence, so that means there's an error in this sentence. And the difficulty is this: it's kind of a misplaced modifier here. B actually works, C doesn't work, D doesn't work, and E doesn't work. And the reason being is, in this case, darting from room to room and twitching, the cat's strange behavior, the modifiers talking about the cat's strange behavior. That cannot be the answer. It's got to be about the cat. The owners were worried about the cat, not the cat's strange behavior. Again, this is something understanding about how they write their tests. So again, grammar, highly tested on it. There's a lot of grammar questions, but again, you've got to learn these grammar rules. Let's get back to another math question, and then I'll do the essay, and then I'll take some questions. So here's another math question. I'm going to teach you a technique that we use at Princeton Review to help us solve it. And one of the things is, when you see algebra, I'm going to tell you now, it's probably best not to use algebra, especially on medium to hard questions on the SAT, because they take too long. So here's an algebra problem. How do we know it's an algebra problem? There's algebraic answers where they have x in there, and it says in terms of x. So our method is to do something we call plugging in. So what plugging in is, we're going to cross out in terms of x, and we're actually going to pick a number for the variable on our own. You can pick any number. I'm going to use my number here. So we're going to pick 20 here. So let's just say x, which is actually Eric, is 20, because it says if Eric pays X dollars, so Eric's paying $20, that's my x. So the next thing then is, I've got to solve for an answer here. So if x is 20, then Lisa pays half as much as Eric. So Lisa pays 10. Okay, see how easy it gets when we're not dealing with algebra? We're just dealing with numbers. And then Lisa pays twice as much as Michelle, so Michelle only pays 5. So how much does a television cost? It costs $35. And if you pick 10, the numbers change for x. I picked 20. So we need to solve for this target. Once I have this target, the next step would be to plug in x into your variable, into the answer choices. So everything that had x in it is now 20. And then we find the target of 35, and that's your answer. Okay? So that's called plugging in. So we take an algebra problem and we make it just mathematical. We use numbers instead. And this is one of the most frequently used techniques of our students, and it works extremely well. You take a hard problem and you actually make it easy. You can use a calculator, but a lot of time I don't use a calculator because I don't need it, because a lot of times the math is actually very simple. But you can use a calculator. Sometimes it's better not to use one for certain types of questions. But yeah, in this case you could. If you need to use it on 20 plus 10 plus 5 to get 35, then use it. So that's what we call plugging in. Here's another technique. Okay, in this one, take a look at it, read it. It feels algebraic though. You know, somebody's twice as old as this and everything. But this one is actually where we're going to actually use, instead of picking a number, they actually give us the numbers. They want to know, how old is Tom now here? So in this scenario, we're actually going to use the answer choices to use as a plug-in. So in this technique, we call it plug-in the answers, PETA, as I call it. And when we PETA something, where we take the answer choices and use those to plug in, we always start at C. So we're going to start at C, and we're going to make Tom, which are the answer choices, 18. So now let's start solving. If Tom is 18, Tom is twice as old as Linda. So Linda's 9. And Linda is 4 years younger than Karen. So Karen is 13. And Karen is 1/3 as old as Brian, who will be twice as old as Tom will be next year. Whoa. So Karen is 1/3 as old as Brian. So let's stop there. So Brian is 39. And then who will be twice as old as Tom will be next year. Oh my God, this is getting hectic here. So next year, Brian will be 40 and Tom will be 19. Now, how do we know it's the right answer? In this PETA technique, what we have to do is we need to solve it, which we did, and then process elimination to find the answer. Then we need to find what we call the stipulation. I highlighted it in blue. How do we know if it's the right answer? We know because we need Brian to be twice as old as Tom will be next year. Well, Tom's 19, Brian will be 40 next year. That's not twice as old, so that's not my answer. And why we start at C is if we start at C, if the number is not high enough or large enough, we can eliminate everything below it. So now let's try 22. And I'm just going to go through it quickly. And you just solve it again, and Brian's 46 next year, and Tom will be 23. That's my answer because he's twice as old next year. So again, another way, another technique. Again, fast technique, but understand when we go into the SAT, you need methods to solve certain types of problems. I showed you 2 quick ones in math. I also showed you some strategies. Now let's look at the reading really fast. So the most important on critical reading, where the passages are, is actually not to read the passages. It takes up so much time. It's really about reading the questions because that's where the points are. And when you go to the questions, then you can go back to the passages. Okay, so think about it as a little open book test. Go back to the passage. The questions are in chronological order, meaning where you find the first question, the next question will be after that question in the passage. Okay, and the reading also is very vocabulary based. So for the sentence completions and the vocab in the context and the critical reading and the reading passages, it's about vocabulary. So I'm going to give you an action item. If you email me tonight or tomorrow or whatever, I'll send you a hit parade, which are frequently tested words on the SAT. So you just got to email me, Anthony, send me the hit parade. And I'll send you some frequently tested words that my teachers and I that we compile after each test on the SAT. Again, just as we are predictable, so are the test writers are predictable. They use the same words over and over again, the same question types. So it's really, really important. Here's another critical reading technique. I didn't even give you the question, but I'm going to show you here what are not the answers by look, how can we eliminate? So let's look at the answer choices and what would you eliminate as an answer choice? And let's take a look at them. So here's the technique. Something that is extreme, an extreme answer will not be your answer. Maybe that gives you a hint. So let's take a look at A. A works okay, that's not extreme. B is extreme because it talks about it lacks true cultural value. They would never say that on an SAT. The test writers, they wouldn't say the monuments in the United States are striking in appearance but lack true cultural value. That's really putting down us. They wouldn't say that. So an extreme answer in the case that they wouldn't say something so extreme. Let's look at C. That's extreme as well. It would never be C because they're talking about a silly boy enduring some punishment. That's very an extreme answer where they're actually harming somebody, something like that. That wouldn't be your answer. And E would be an extreme answer because it talks about something never being, empirical facts can never be successfully modeled. It's so extreme because all you have to do is find something that where it's not never, and you find your answer. For example, like everyone loved Picasso. That would never be your answer because it's extreme. All you have to do is find one person who didn't love Picasso, and that does not your answer. So these extreme answer choices are another technique that our students use that you could use on an SAT to help you eliminate and get closer to the answer. So no, you still should guess in this scenario. So go, guess. I would guess A. How about if we were down to 2? Again, a critical reading they told you. What would we eliminate? All right, I'm this one. Anybody?
Hey, Anthony, your audio is cutting out a little bit, like the last 10
B. What would you
seconds.
eliminate? Eliminate the answer, but what would you eliminate? Oh, I'm cutting out. How's that?
Yeah, that's better. Like
Hello,
the last probably 15 to 20 seconds was hard to
Rob.
hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
I can hear you fine now, yes.
looking for what would you eliminate in these two questions here? If we're down to two, we just talked about extreme answer choices. What would you get rid of? Rob, did we get anybody answering for the first one?
Yeah, it looks like B and a couple A's.
Yes. Okay, well, we got, again, a few different answers. So let's look at this. Again, you're not going to learn all these techniques in a night. This takes a lot of practice. Eliminate B. It talks about something inevitably results in the creation of a new language. That's so extreme. Okay, and this again takes practice. In B, it talks about the opponent's only purpose. That's so extreme. I would get rid of B. Okay, and we haven't even read the passage. So there's a lot of times, and these techniques can help you get closer to the answer choice. So again, the SAT isn't just about knowing your academics, but also knowing what wouldn't be in an answer choice based on how the writers give answers. And these extreme choices are a great way to eliminate. Now, I haven't even showed you actually some other methods to solving critical reading passages and the different question types and how to do an inference question and what are the steps to those. But I'm just showing you, again, quick strategies so you understand that there's more to prepping for an SAT than understanding how to solve a ratio or how to solve or know grammar rules. There's more to it. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do tonight. So because of time, I have some sentence completions here, but we don't really have the time for that. So I'm going to not go through those. And I talk about the essay. I want to show you something. For those parents who are here too, by the way, here's actually a website here down at the bottom that has a lot of sample essay prompts from College Board. So take a look at it. If you can, write it down. If not, watch the recording and then take a look at it. But I want to show you. Here's the directions for the essay. It's huge. It's a whole page here. Most kids, when they take the SAT, they read. The essay gives you an opportunity to show how effectively you can. You just wasted 10 minutes of your 25 minutes by reading this whole thing. Okay? You don't even need to read the little box in there. All you really need to read is the assignment, which is, do the costs of technology sometimes outweigh the benefits? That's all you need to know and write your essay on. That's it. My students, all they do is read that one line, and they get writing into their essay. Because of time, I'm not going to go through all the different things about writing your essay, but real quickly, neatness is important, length counts, put some paragraphs, introductions, conclusions, etc. Okay. I really apologize that it's such a fast session. There's so much to say, but what I want to leave you with a couple more pointers. One is you got to take triple P is practice, practice, practice with A, an analysis. You need to do a lot of practice on it, not just practicing your vocabulary, but taking full-length practice tests. That's going to increase your confidence, lower your test anxiety because you've gone through it before. You got to take them and you got to time them. You got to analyze how you do on them and pace yourself. And you got to work on your techniques, your strategies, and your methods. Okay. So here's the 5 things I told you we were going to talk about. How you succeed on a multiple choice test. You need content. We talked about it. But the reason why grade students in high school don't do well on an SAT sometimes is they only look at the content. You need the strategy, which we talked about. We talked about technique like PETA and plugging in, practice and analysis, and the last thing is confidence and endurance. If you have those 5 things, you're going to do well on the SAT or the ACT or the subject test or something like that. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to open it up to questions, Rob, right now, just because of time. And we'll see if any other of these questions come up. I'm going to leave these timeline considerations up, but let's open up to questions, Rob.
Yeah, sounds good. So talking about timeline, there were some earlier questions. Do you absolutely have to take the SAT as a junior? And then a similar question, how many times are you able to retake the SAT?
Great, great questions. Well, you can retake it multiple times. A lot of schools will take your schools will mix them, right?
Anthony, you're cutting out again.
You love those.
Mm,
Taking more than twice. Not a great extra when you go,
yeah,
oh, I
Anthony,
took
hard to hear
9
you.
times. They won't let you in just because they think you're obsessive compulsive. So what I usually tell is prep for 1, plan for 2, and leave time for 3. So the ideal time is the summer before your junior year. So you can prep in the summer when you're not in school. If not, you don't do it then sometime before the end of your junior year, you take your first one. So the senior year is used to clean it up. Take your second one maybe. All right, other questions, but great question.
Can you talk a bit more about order of difficulty as it pertains to math and the other sections, as well as kind of the average Joe strategy? Does that apply more to the more difficult math questions at the end, or is it kind of evenly applicable across the entire section?
Well, there's order of difficulty. Great question, and I'm glad I got you thinking. And again, in an hour, you can't get it all, so you need to really go home and do your homework about preparing for the test. But there's order of difficulty in the math. There's order of difficulty on the grammar questions. There's no order of difficulty on reading comprehension because it's in chronology. There's order of difficulty on the math when you put your own answers in. And then so there is on the other sections is on like the grammar portion. So the grammar rules, there might be more a bit as well on some of those. But you need to know some people are stronger on one than the other, so maybe it doesn't pertain as much. It pertains a lot on the math just because it's a little more straightforward in where you find the easy, medium, and difficult. But for example, sentence completions are in order of difficulty. So number 1 is easy, and one that has 5 questions on sentence completion, number 5 is really hard. So usually the number 5 is going to have 2 blanks. It's going to have words you don't understand. So for example, it's not going to be that easy. So yeah, you can use Joe blogs on some of those, on sentence completions as well, but I would suggest practicing it before you start throwing that around, that technique around.
Great, thanks. We got a few questions on the essay, and I'll just kind of lump them all together and let you tackle them
Sure.
in one group. Should you make reference to the quote they give you? Is it better to write in cursive or non-cursive? How many
Right.
paragraphs should you have? What sort of format should the essay take? And then how important is it with spelling on the essay?
Well, they're not really supposed to dock you for spelling, but if you don't know how to spell a word, don't use that word. If you write neither in cursive than print, then write it in cursive. If you write chicken scratch, try to write bigger. I mean, these all things make a difference. In terms of paragraphs and stuff, have an intro, have a conclusion, and have at least 2 body paragraphs supporting it. Um, what other, did I catch all those?
You did.
I don't
Excellent.
know if I got all 3 of those. Okay.
You did.
So again, there's more to it, but again, in the Princeton Review, we kind of teach them and we practice certain ways to write it, certain templates and examples, and we work on that. So if you're practicing on your own, you got to work on all those things. But again, you can practice on a lot of different prompts. So, somebody mentioned, should you restate the prompt? You should always tie back to the prompt. So if your prompt has to do about wearing uniforms in school, is that, or censorship or something, you want to go back, well, I agree with censorship in the sense that whatever, and you're tying it to the prompt. You don't have to restate it word for word, but you need to tie back to it.
Another question going back to the math.
While we get some more, oh, perfect.
So in terms of the math questions and difficulty, should you, with students that you work with, on average, do you encourage them to answer all the questions or leave the last one or two blank if they're very difficult? And does that depend on kind of what score they're typically getting?
It matters on a couple things. Who the student is, it's very individual. What score they're shooting for, or actually what score they're actually at the moment. So I have some students that start in the 500 range, so they're not actually answering the hard questions yet. And along the way, we take multiple practice tests, so they go from 500 to 600 to 650 to 700. So maybe initially they're not doing those hard questions, but by the end they are. So it really depends on what point in time you are in your prep or how you're doing. And it depends on the individual whether they can get it. It also depends on what type of question is. For some students, they're better at geometry than algebra. So if it's a really hard one, it's a geometry one, and they're really good at it, it's their kind of their thing, then they should do it. If it's algebraic and they always struggle on that, then maybe they skip it. So really, there's a lot of individualization that goes into working with students and what is their plan of attack or their pacing. Again, their personality type. So take it on your own terms. Your terms might be different than the next person next to you. What I also want to say, which there's a slide up there now, is whatever you're scoring now and whatever you want to go based on the schools you want to go to, find that gap. If it's 300 points, you're going to need a lot of work. If it's only 50 points, you don't need as much work. You need to find that. Don't think like in a day you're going to turn around and get, oh, my PSAT I scored, I got 1,600. So when I take my SAT in 3 months, I'm going to get a 1,900. No, you're 300 points away from your goal. You're probably going to need some formal prep or something. Don't go in lightly. Again, prep for one and be done with it. Why have to drag it out? Too many kids make the wrong mistake thinking, oh, well, 6 months of extra school is going to help me on my SAT. It's not an academic test, as hopefully I've shown you here. There's some content involved in how you do ratios, averages, fundamentals, and stuff like that. But it's more than that. You need other methods on how to approach sentence completions, which we didn't even go over tonight, but you need some technique for that. You also need to know how to do fractions and percents and stuff like that. So it's a combination of everything. So don't go in lightly and then use the schools you want to go to as your goal and how much time you need to put in. Oh, and by the way, you can take a free practice test at princeu.com. Take a free practice test. That's something definitely I encourage you to do. Let me see. Oh, here's some websites where you can go and learn more about each of the tests. But let me get you to take a practice test. Here, princeu.com/events. You can take one at one of our sites. We're doing a lot of free test events, or you could just go online and take one online. So see how you score, and then even let me know. I'm happy to help you on with that.
And for those who are juniors,
Other questions, Rob?
yeah, for juniors in the audience who have yet to take an SAT, can you give kind of a general, I know you touched on it, but a general recommendation of when they should take the exam, approximately how many hours
Yes.
they should put in to prepare and just some tips on that?
Yeah. Okay, if you're a junior right now and you've yet to partake in this whole thing, you need to consider a couple things. What schools you want to go to and what they require. If they require subject testing as well as the SAT or ACT, then those are really reserved for, or AP testing. May and June are a good time frame, so you're kind of missing the window. So you may be taking subject tests in May and then your SAT in June. If you missed some of those windows, then you got senior year in the fall. In terms of how long you prep for, great question. Again, it's an individual thing. If you want to improve, I've had kids I've tutored who want to improve 400 points, but they only want to put in 1 weekend of prep. It ain't going to work. You probably, depending on the kind of improvement you want, if you're talking about a typical 200 to 300 point improvement, which is kind of when people call me, that's kind of what they're looking for. It's going to probably take a couple months. So if you're looking to go and you have maybe your PSAT score, but you haven't taken the SAT yet, and you're scoring 1,500, and you want 2,000, trying to take it for May is just probably not going to work. Probably taking it for June is probably not going to work. It's probably too late in the game. Probably shooting for the summer and spending probably 2 to 3 months in the summer is your best bet. So again, the time you prep is going to depend on your goal and how much improvement you need. So that really goes hand in hand. So if you're talking about Ivy Leagues and UC schools, your improvement or your score needs to be higher. So if you're looking for, and I kind of had a little thing over here about schools, is it the high end? Is it more the low end? Where are you looking for? That's going to determine your prep, number one, what kind of prep you need and how much time you need for it.
I know
And
this was
while we're on
SAT.
that, for those who attended tonight, yes.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Anthony. Go ahead. Sorry.
I would say, and for those of you attending, I have a special offer for you that you can reach out to me directly. I have a couple discounts listed here for Princeton Review that you can reach out to me, and as well as get at that hit parade. By attending tonight doesn't obligate you to anything, but I'm giving this offer out to you for taking a first step towards doing something. All right, Rob, what was the next question you had? You said?
So we're a little over, but two last questions that I wanted to address. One is obviously this was SAT focused, but can you very quickly touch on the ACT, why it's different, and how or why students might want to consider that as an alternate
Right.
exam to the SAT?
Sure. That's a huge question, so I encourage you to attend next week with my colleague Ryan Kick, who's going to be doing one on ACT next Tuesday. So go there and you'll see some of the differences. It is a little more curriculum based, that's what I'm going to say, and it has some science reasoning and a little more reading comprehension. If you go to princeu.com, you can learn about the difference between SAT and ACT. I'd rather focus still on the SAT on this session.
Perfect. And for follow-up, everyone, we will be sending you an email with a link to this video. It will have Anthony's contact information in that email, so you'll be able to very easily follow up with him or with me with any other questions or any needs you have. Hopefully, this was helpful and eye-opening, and will get you thinking more about what you need to do to prepare for this exam and ultimately be successful getting into the college of your choice. Any last words, Anthony?
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, no, just thank you, everybody. For again, like for those that are in juniors now, you need to start acting. And if you haven't done anything, again, I have this slide up. Take a full-length test. See how you do if you have never done it, and then get that skull. That's kind of your baseline. And then from there, determine your goals, and that'll help you decide what type of prep you need, how long it should be, or if you should just go in and take it because you're where you want to be. And again, you can email me, Anthony, I took the practices, I scored this, here's where I want to go, what do you think? And I'm happy to give you, hey, you just need a book, you need 30 points, or just some vocabulary might get you there. So I'd encourage you to do that. Other than that, some great questions out there. Hopefully I got you thinking about it differently than you might have originally thought. And Rob, thank you for your time, and for Zinch for setting this up. And hopefully I'll hear from some of you guys soon.
Great. Thanks, Anthony, and thanks, everyone. Have a good night.